Hi, I'm Pamela Davis, and I'm back with you, basically winding up our segment on ghosts and other dimensions, part of the Reincarnation Chronicle. We're going to be going into episode 6 now. And what we're going to be talking about right now initially is one way to communicate with spirits, which can't be guaranteed to be 100% safe, but it is safer than a lot of methods that would definitely not be recommended, such as Ouija boards and seances. This is called, what we're after here would be called an EVP, or an electronic voice phenomenon. And EVPs have been researched now for many, many decades. Serious scientific research began on EVPs a long time ago in Europe. I believe was the first research in the Scandinavian countries, and then in England. And the way that you get what an EVP is the recording of a disembodied voice on a recording device. When I started doing them, I was just using a basic handheld, good quality tape recorder. And if anybody still has those, you could still use that. But now there's a lot of electronic equipment that records sound in an excellent way. It's very sensitive, and I would suggest, if you want to do this, to buy a simple but the most sensitive sound recording equipment that you can, which is also easily moved. You can take it to different places, which is important. So what you would do to obtain an EVP is to go into the building where you believe there would be a spirit that could communicate with you. And this could be, it doesn't even have to be a haunted location. You can pick these things up in houses, your own house, where somebody that loves you or cares about you, and in some cases somebody who might really want to bother you, would realize that you're asking to be communicated with and deliberately make an effort to connect with you, even though they're not haunting the location specifically. So in any case, you go into the space where you've determined you want to be, and you first check it out carefully to make sure that there are no open doors and windows, that nobody next door has on a radio or a television. You try to make sure that you're not going to be picking up sources of sound that would have nothing to do with an electric voice phenomenon. That is the voice of a spirit that you may want to contact. Once you've done that, and you determine that it's a very, very quiet and secure location for that purpose, then you simply turn on the equipment, set the volume on high, and you can either remain there very, very quietly, or you can turn it on and leave. It seems to work either way, but I think that actually it's better if you stay there, remain there very, very quietly, because the spirit that would be inclined to talk to you that way will get energy through using your physical energy. So you wait. You can, being in a meditative state would probably be helpful. You could set up protection. You could send out an intention that only the most evolved and reliable spirits are welcome to come through to you, that anything of low vibrational quality is returned to its source forthwith. There are different things you could and probably should do to make sure that you get the highest caliber transmission that's possible. Then you let it run for a determined amount of time. I would say a short amount of time to begin with, like 3 to 5 minutes. Turn it off, run it back, and then play it back and listen. In some cases, And the more you do it, by the way, the better results you will get. But it can be really quite astonishing what comes through in a room where you know there was nothing else besides yourself sitting quietly. You may receive messages. Now, you're not going to hear a message that sounds like somebody talking in a normal voice. It takes a tremendous amount of effort for a spirit to project itself onto our modern recording equipment, which, considering the subtlety and the fineness of the vibrations on other levels, our equipment is still pretty what would you say, primitive when you compare the different energetic levels there. So you have to listen very carefully, because what you'll tend to get is something like, it will come across often, not always, but often, as a whisper, and you have to listen very carefully sometimes to see what they're saying. But once you get one or two words, it tends to, then suddenly you'll get it. And it's usually a few words at a time, not a whole phrase, but just a few words. The most dramatic instance of this came to me a long time ago, when I was working on the exhibit I've mentioned before on life after death. EVPs were part of the research that our team engaged in. And a few years prior to that, someone that I had dearly loved very much committed suicide, a young man. I was deeply in love with him when I was in my early 20s, and he eventually took his own life, which was heartbreaking to me and to those of us who had known and loved him. And just a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful young man. One night I was at home in my house with my then husband. We were watching something, and the phone rang. It was close to midnight, and it was our two partners who were both on the line. In their house in Pasadena, they had been doing an EVP experiment, and they said, "Pamela, you won't believe what happened." But it was Valentine's Day, which I forgot to mention. It was the night of Valentine's Day. And they said we were doing an EVP experiment, and all of a sudden we got a message, clear as day, arose for Pamela. And she said, we recognized the voice right away. They had both known this young man who had died. Immediately they recognized his voice, and he knew that they would call me and give me the message that was meant just for me, a very personal, beautiful, loving message. So because of my own experience, I can tell you that I think EVPs are okay, that they're safe, and I would encourage you to try them. But don't get addicted. It's easy to get really stuck in something like this, but you can just see what happens. So this is one of the things that can be meaningful to you. Another thing that I would advise, if you're a young couple and you are thinking about having a child, because there are so many souls who would love to just jump into the first available body, it's really a good idea, if your intention is to get pregnant, to have some preparation. Get yourselves ready in an effort to draw the most loving, advanced, trouble-free spirit that you possibly can, or the one that would be of the most that would bring you the most rewarding lifetime experience. So you could, first of all, it's important to think about your diet. Pregnant women aren't supposed to be drinking anyway, so get used to not taking alcohol before you even conceive a baby. And the father too should abstain for that time. Have a clean diet, get your body as clean as possible, and meditate together, and try to meld your energies as a couple into a really loving, wonderful vortex that would draw down the most beautiful, the most perfect spirit for you. And this doesn't mean somebody who will come in with no problems, because there is no such thing, but somebody that will match you in spiritual um, at a level of spirituality that's compatible with your own, and somebody who can really be helped by you and who comes to bring you really valuable lessons as well. So preparation for getting pregnant is a wonderful thing to do. It's fun, and you'll feel that you've really honored the process to the maximum by doing that. So the last thing I would say is if you're having trouble, I mentioned this before, but it was in another context. If you've got a place where you think that you've got a haunting going on, remember you try sage, try holy water, and also you can do what my friend did with the, you get the charcoal discs, dried rosemary, and tincture of benzoin, and you light that, and you walk around and you spread that smoke all over the place and think thoughts of cleansing the spirit to be gone, that the spirit has, you say you are to go to the light, you don't belong here, you are not welcome in this place, you are to go out and you are to go to the light where you do belong, and you are to leave this place at once. Leave us in peace and leave us in spiritual cleanliness. And oftentimes this works. I've done this. I do this now routinely every time I go into a new place. So these are things that can be done to become more familiar with the spirit world, and for us to understand what it takes when we, not only for ourselves, but when we want to bring in a baby, as I mentioned, that's going to reincarnate. The baby chooses us, chooses its parents for its own benefit, for the lessons that it can learn, but also to the lessons and blessings it can bring to the couple, to its parents. And the more mindful that we are in all of these circumstances, the better it will be for everybody on all sides of the light, here on earth and in all the other dimensions. So I hope you've enjoyed our foray into ghosts and other dimensions, and we'll see what comes up next time. Thank you for joining me.